Well, hey there, YouTubers. This is the Comic Book Outcast here with 123 Comic Man, that's myself, and of course, the Captain Cummings.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Today we have a very special show for you. We're talking about a comic book that we both really love. Last time we talked about a comic book that was kind of, mediocre, kind of bland. There were good things and there were some bad things, but this is a really exciting time for us because we can actually talk about something that both of us are currently enjoying reading. It's a comic book that we're continuing to read, and of course, that is SAGA.
Yes.
So, why don't you start us off, the Captain Cummings?
I'll give us a brief view about what the book is about.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, some say it's like a Star Wars space Romeo and Juliet type love story. It's about Marco, which is from Wreath, which is the moon of landfall, where Alana is from. And they are both their races are at war with each other. One has horns and one has wings. And they fall in love with each other and have a baby, and everybody else is trying to basically kill them. That, in a nutshell, is SAGA.
If I were to put this into like a literary term, it would probably qualify as what we call a space opera. So it's a big story, and there's a lot of focus on relationships, and a big focus on, I guess, bigger issues than just two people, right? I mean, it's like, it is about Marco and Alana, but it's also about this larger war and like their forbidden love. So it's pretty cool. There's a lot going on in these books. It's how many issues in? 13?
13 issues.
And I'll tell you what, when I read that first issue, I don't think I'd ever been so excited for a comic book before. That first issue immediately draws you in. It throws you right into the middle of the action, and it accomplishes so much in such a short amount of time. It sets up this larger world, or larger universe, I guess. It sets up these relationships, and it also cues the reader into something that has become somewhat of a trademark for this series, that you don't really know what to expect from each issue.
Well, it was also double-sized, so you got so much story in that first issue that, I wrote down in my notes that it's probably one of the best first issues that I've ever read.
Really?
Because of just how the pacing and just everything about it brought you right into this world that 13 issues in, it's a good series if you're reading it that far into it.
Right, and looking forward to the next issue. I mean, like, let's start with, since we're probably going to spend a lot of time talking about the positives of this book, let's start with the things that maybe we're not so crazy about, because I don't know about you, but there are some things that I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
Or maybe you don't share that same feeling, but
well, there are some things. I'm not big on the the sexual nature that they go just knee deep right into. Mm-hmm. Like I took notes, and there's 6 instances throughout the book where you're just like, there's a big troll nutsack, or just something that you're just like, oh, I could have really done without that.
I can't unsee these things. Fiona Staples, why do you keep drawing things I can't unsee? Yeah, true. I would say, for me, one of the things that bugs me a little bit, and I know these creators are busy, I get that, but is the fact that it comes out once a month for how many months? 9 months?
9 or 6 or something like that.
6 or 9 months or something, and then they take a 3-month hiatus, and then they come back into it and release another 6 or 9 months. And I mean, part of that is the fact that it's so good that I just don't want to wait that long, you know?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean,
So,
it is. I can see with the art though. I mean, she is doing the coloring and the art herself. I mean, a lot of the times you'll have a penciler, an inker, a colorist.
right.
So I don't know. That's all. I don't really know that much about it, but yeah, the timing and how slow it comes out is kind of a big negative, I guess.
And here's the thing: is when there's so much time that goes by.
I forgot everything. I reread it, and there was so much.
You either forget it, right? That's a problem, number one, or maybe you don't forget it, but your expectation of that next book is so high that like it couldn't possibly live up to it. So like, for example, issue number 13 came out recently, last month. It was the first issue to come out in 3 months, and it was a good issue. It was good, you know, but it wasn't an issue where I was like, whoa, I gotta read the next issue, you know. It was good, but it just didn't pack the punch that I would expect from that kind of build up after 3 months, you know?
Well, there's after rereading it, like, because I reread it twice. I read it all this week and took notes, and then I reread it again to see how it flowed as a story.
Yeah.
And like I see it in a total different manner than I did the first time that I've been just reading it, you know, month to month or whatever.
Right. How so?
Well, there's one thing. The first issue. Now, hear me on this. I'll just read the part where Hazel, the baby, is speaking, and it's the monologue or whatever. This is how an idea becomes real. But ideas are fragile things. Most don't live long outside of either from which they are pulled kicking and screaming. That's why we create with someone else. The word two minds can sometimes improve the odds of an idea's survival, but there are no guarantees. To me, I read that and I was like, I had read that Brian K. Vaughan thought of Saga when he was a child growing up. And so I kind of looked at that and I was like, I wonder if he's writing that talking about him and Fiona working on this book together, and that's how it, you know, came together. Or it could mean that his baby at the same time was born when the first issue came up. I saw that on Wikipedia.
Oh, really?
So it could be talking about that, or the first thing that I talked about. I like to think that it was him, and it was talking about his professional relationship with Fiona Staples writing this book with her.
So how did the 13th book flow with the rest of the story after rereading all of them?
Oh, I thought it was really good. You know, the book, I don't know if there's any reason to really spoil anything. We'll just, you know, say there was a lot that happened. A certain character gets a name, finally.
Yeah, right.
So, you know, I mean, that's a big thing right there. I mean, getting a name. If you don't have a name, I would assume that would be a big deal, really. There was a battle with Bones. I mean,
right.
I mean, it flowed pretty well. It was kind of weird that, you know, Saga kind of goes back and forth time-wise. It doesn't have like a linear, is that the right word? Just straight line in time.
True.
So it was kind of odd that from the 12th issue, 13 is behind 12 time-wise.
Right, yeah. Because it focuses on a different character at some point during. Yep. Yeah, and some of the other things that kind of stuck out to me is like areas where I thought, I mean, and I say this with the caveat that I love this series and we're going to get to the things that we really like about the series. But areas of improvement that I think didn't quite work for me was there's a character that they introduce about halfway through the books as of right now that they kill off like 2 issues later or like 1 issue later. And I didn't have enough time with that character to actually make that death feel meaningful to me. It felt meaningful to me in terms of how that death affected the main characters, but I didn't feel connected to that character. And so when he did die, I was just kind of like, whatever, you know?
Yeah, I can see that because, I mean, it was so instant too.
Yeah.
It's not like this is The Walking Dead or something where.
Right. But let's talk about Saga in terms of like The Walking Dead, because in a lot of ways, it kind of has that same feeling to it where you feel like you never know what to expect when you open a book. You know, you feel like the author and the artists are willing to break any rules and shock you, and they do time after time after time. That every time you open a book, you're like, what am I going to see next? What am I going to hear these characters say next? And that part's really exciting to me. I like the unpredictability of it.
Yeah, and it's very much both. Well, I mean, both also are big books on characterization and relationships within all of that world, also, which is why they're both highly successful books at the same time.
Yeah, right. Do you think that that Saga has the star power that Walking Dead has? Like, do you think there's when Walking Dead was at this point in its history, you know, 12 or 13 issues in, do you think there was the same type of excitement over Walking Dead as there is around Saga?
That I don't know, because I mean I think I finally took the Walking Dead plunge like 100 issues in.
Yeah.
so it's really hard for me to answer that question. I mean, I hear it had delays in the beginning, so maybe it didn't. I don't know.
I know it had a pretty small print run for The Walking Dead. I mean. And I remember when Saga came out, I don't know if the print run was small or not. I don't have those numbers, but I remember there was a like limit 1 per customer rule put into play in all my local comic book shops. Was that the same for where you live?
Well, the problem is they had so many people pull it, and our store only got 15 copies.
Oh.
So it really didn't matter.
Did you get a number 1?
I had to. I actually was lucky, and somebody said that they were selling them autographed on Midtown, and so I got mine autographed by Brian K. Vaughan for cover price.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool.
Awesome. That is awesome. Well, and I went to my local comic book shop and I picked it up off the shelf and I was looking through it and I was just like got completely drawn in and I'm like, this is gonna be big. I feel like this is gonna be something. So then I bought that and then I went to like every other comic book shop in town and bought a copy of that comic. So I actually have like 5 or 6 first prints of the number 1 just like sitting in my short box.
That's like $600.
Yeah, and it's the book's taken off, you know, like, I mean, an ungraded, you know, near mint minus book goes for like $60 to $80. So that's not too bad.
Yeah, it's really cool to see a book that you see come out as a number 1 just like skyrocket that you own. You know what I mean?
Right.
And really enjoy it. I mean, some of these other books, I don't know if I would enjoy them as much.
Right.
I know that with the art, it's not particularly the most detailed art, which I'm always a fan of detail. But
Yeah.
it's what's being drawn is what's. It's all about the characters with the drawings. The backgrounds are usually like muddled or non-existent.
Yeah, yeah,
But I mean, when you got a lady that, or when you got a ghost with its intestines hanging out, and people with horns and wings and all that, TV heads. I mean, TV head. I love how the TV head, you see the emotion on the screen when he's talking.
right. And I particularly appreciate the amount of color that Fiona uses. Like her palette is huge, you know? Like sometimes I feel like you'll read a comic book and it's so dark that you just feel like you're just staring into like a black hole or something like that, right? Like every page is just so dark that like you can barely see the art. And those types of books really bug me because I feel like it's almost a cop out, you know? It's like, what, did you not have enough time to like draw stuff in, so you just filled it in with black? Whereas like Fiona, like I agree with you, it's definitely less detailed. Like it's a computer's version of watercolor, I guess. This is probably the best way to describe it, or the best way I can describe it. Like, cause like she draws on the computer, and or at least I think she does, and it's like kind of like watercolor. Like you can't get super detailed with it, but at the same time, the palette is so diverse that every time you turn the page, you really do feel like you're on another planet, or you do really feel like you're meeting an entirely new species because they look so different in terms of color. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd have to completely agree with that. Kubert.
Oh, Joe Kubert?
Joe Kubert. You know, I'm not really a fan of his art exactly, but I love what he was always drawing. You know, it was always some crazy fantasy thing, and it's the exact same thing here. Why I love this book, because it's a guy with horns. You know, it's got it's just like wild stuff that you don't see anywhere else.
Right. And YouTubers, before you think that like we're just like a bunch of Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples fanboys, I personally had never read a single Brian K. Vaughan comic prior to reading this book. Like his fan base that he came in with, I was completely oblivious to all that. I never read Why the Last Man. I never read anything. And Fiona Staples, from what I understand, is fairly new to the scene. You know?
This is her first big book, I mean.
Except for what?
This is her first big book.
Her first big book, right. So, I mean, I feel like, at least, especially Fiona Staples, but Brian K. Vaughan too, I feel like they really earned their stripes with this book. Like, I think of all the books that I look forward to in a week, this is the one that I look forward to the most because it's always something new and exciting happening, with the exception of issue number 13. I did not particularly find that one very exciting. I didn't find it exciting. It was a good issue. Like, if it had been any other book, I would have been like, that was awesome. But my expectation for this book is so high now.
You waited too long. You waited too long. It took too long for you to get out.
Yeah, I built it up, man. And I wonder if that's kind of, I would hate for it to happen, but I do wonder if that's kind of the fate of this book. Like, how do you keep something like this fresh for more than 12 issues or 13 issues, you know? I suppose that's any creator's, you know, job, but it's, I hope that the next issue it really brings back like a lot of people complain about the shock factor. I actually like that. I think that it's something that sets this book apart from a lot of other books because a lot of other books will do it to get readers back into a story, whereas like this story does it throughout. So, you know what I'm saying? Like,
there's something I was noticing, and I was talking about it earlier about me rereading it, and it kind of changed my opinion of what the story really is about.
Yeah.
You have the will and the stalk. They're two different species, and they're together.
Okay, so explain for the YouTube viewers out there that don't know who those characters are. Explain who they are.
Well, the will and the stalk. Pretty much what I figured out also is anybody with "the" in their word is a bounty hunter, pretty much. And the will is this bald guy that runs around with a cape, and he has like a mask that he never puts on, which I'm wondering when that's going to go on. And the stalk is another bounty hunter that is a spider, and I won't spoil that, but anyways, they're kind of together, but they hate each other, sort of thing. They've broken up, but they still love each other.
And they're both after Marco and Alana.
Yes.
Main characters.
And anyways, she's a spider, so they're two different species, and so we'll go on from there. From what I mean, the Alana and Marco are two different species. She's a free. What's the name? Landfall. She's from Landfall, and Marco is a Moonite from Reef. And so they're two different species. And even Marco's fiance, Gwendolyn, she's a totally different color. So basically what I think this book really, a lot of the themes is about, is just like interracial and different, type of races coming together and experiences with that, really.
Right.
Because the only two that seem to be the same race is the TV heads.
Right. And I mean that the idea of mixing race issues with high fantasy is not, it's not a particularly new one. I mean, pretty much I almost feel like it's impossible to write a fantasy without talking about race in some respect, because that's what sets fantasies apart from other stories, is that you do have these different races interacting with each other that that come from different planets or different worlds or different sides of the planet or whatever. So, but then the question is, why does this particular story stand out? What sets it apart from your traditional fantasy book or fantasy comic?
I mean, it's a huge love story that usually isn't a big part of comics.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually a good point. I think that especially when it comes to fantasy, you don't find a bunch of love stories in the fantasy genre. It's more like fighting stuff, like adventure type stuff, And
I mean, there's him. I mean, most of really this story is a lot of relationships and all that, the different relationships in the book, and sprinkling of fighting with different stuff. I mean, there's not a lot of fighting.
Yeah. So who's your favorite character in the series?
I don't know. I'm really interested in the Will right now, because I'm wondering what they talk about, how he's a monster and how terrible he is, and I'm just waiting for that to see, what they're talking about, because he doesn't seem like a bad guy so far. He's saved a slave girl. Seems all right.
Yep. For me, I would have to say it's Alana. I think she's hilarious. Like, she has absolutely no filter when it comes to the things that she says. So I always find her like just hilarious to read about. I think she's awesome. Not to mention that, like, she's also just like a warrior, you know what I mean? She's not some damsel in distress by any means. And I like that. I like strong female protagonists,
There's a lot of strong female protagonists in this book also.
Yeah.
Pretty much every single one of them. I noticed on 13, I had this thought that the mother reminds me of Samantha's mother on Bewitched. I'm pretty much thinking that might be like where she came from, maybe.
Really?
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. and the creativity in this book, I mean, aside from you know, breaking stereotype and using like strong female protagonists in a fantasy book, which by the way doesn't happen that often. Like, I'm really happy to see that, like, the whole, I mean, because fantasy books are largely a male wish fulfillment story, you know, and so it's like to see these like strong female protagonists in a fantasy book, because generally speaking, men are the ones reading fantasy, at least historically. I don't know about currently, but and so it's cool to see strong female protagonists in a fantasy book. But outside of that, I also love just the creativity that they have, that Brian K. Vaughan has surrounding things like for example, the spaceship tree. You know, if I were to put, so there's this spaceship that they fly around in, and it's actually like a living tree that like flies in space. And if I were to think of like the two things that I personally would like never think to put together, it would be like some sort of flora and a spacecraft. Like, those two things don't seem like they would go together at all.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty.
They make it work, and like you're like totally on board. You're like, yeah, they fly around and like put roots down in like different planets. Like, it's just so cool.
I never even thought to like think against that at all, because I'm just like, as soon as you said that, I was like, wait a second, how does this tree grow with like no air or water?
Yeah, right. So, no, I love that, and I think that that's the type of creativity that, if they can keep that up and keep surprising me with things like that, they'll have me as a reader for a very long time. Same thing with the ghost girl. What's her name?
I got it at the top of my notes. Isabella.
But it's basically, you know, the baby's babysitter, and she's just like this incorporeal ghost that just like floats around with her intestines hanging out, and like is really funny, and helps them out from time to time, you know?
Yeah.
Which is just, I never would have put ghosts and fantasy together either. So like, it's this weird creative like blending of genres that that it just works, you know? It's hard to describe. That's why, I mean, in a lot of ways, this podcast is one of the more difficult podcasts to do, because it's like, how do you even put your finger on this book? How do you describe this book?
Well,
you know?
it uses different types of stories too. Like number 12, I swear, the ending with that, it just reminds me, like, the first thing that popped in my head was like the Jews hiding from the Nazis, you know, sort of Anne Frank type of story.
Right.
Because I don't know, we're probably far enough to spoil that one. If you're watching this, I mean, come on. That's where the TV head makes it to the author's house, and he's having a confrontation with him. The author's name is Oswald Heist, and he wrote the book that Alana really loves. And they have a big discussion, and he's like, I think that they're going to come and see you, so I'm going to hang out until they do. And then it shows them, and they're on the staircase, like, already there.
Yeah, like listening in.
I'm like, that's exactly...
Right.
I just thought that was awesome. I was like, it's like so many different, like, dealings with... To me, it's so many dealings with race and different topics.
It's like Anne Frank hiding in the attic.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, the more I think about it, there's so many dealings with race in this book and different ways to look at it. Like, I could just see, like, some kid that lives in bumfuck wherever, you know, thinks...
Oh my God.
No offense to anybody that lives in bumfuck wherever. I live there myself. But you know, usually when you live in those type of places, you have a set mindset. And this could really opens up somebody's mind, you know, reading this story.
Yeah, and like, I mean, the underlying theme of all of this is like, why is it so important that they find these two, lovebird runaways from different races? Like, yeah, okay, their races are fighting, fine, I get it, but like, don't they have better things to do? So like, it really brings up this like issue of like, you know like you were talking about with the Nazis, like ethnic cleansing, and keeping racial lines, quote unquote pure or whatever. I mean, it's like they don't really talk about it specifically, but I mean, it's clear from these, you know, the TV heads reactions that like that's something that's very important to them,
Mm-hmm.
So I agree.
Yes, definitely. Maybe that's probably going to be something that comes on later. Because I mean, 13 issues is pretty far of a series. I mean, a lot of series don't make it 13 issues.
Right.
But it very well could be the very beginning of this series at the same time. I mean, if it goes 150 in or something,
Right.
we're very much new into this series.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's funny because I feel like for 13 issues, I feel like I've been reading it longer than that. So much has happened.
I'm pretty sure that's probably because it comes out so infrequently with the breaks. But, with quality, I mean, this could be something, that you reread many times, once it's over.
Right.
So I'm not taking on it too much on that.
In the back of one of the comic books, Brian K. Vaughan mentioned that he doesn't ever want to turn this series into a movie or a TV show or anything like that because he doesn't feel like it would do it justice. He doesn't want to focus on that. He wants to focus on it being a good comic book first. What do you feel about that? Do you think that it should be turned into a TV show or a movie, or do you think he's right that it's better off staying a comic book?
Well, I mean, I like movies and TV. And I mean, while you look at like The Walking Dead, it's good and all that, but at the same time, the TV show is good.
Yeah.
At the same time, you always watch it and you're like, well, I liked this better, or this was different,
Right.
or... I mean, I don't know. If it was done really good, I don't think I would care. But if it was bad... Like, there's too much stuff that you get upset because it's bad. It's like, I don't know. At the same time, it would be awesome as a TV show if they did it good.
Right. The visual effects would have to be like out of this world. No pun intended. Yeah, I feel like they would just have to dump so much money into it, which if they did that would be awesome.
Well,
I'm also biased too because I have like 6 copies of #1, so I would love it if they turned it to a movie or TV show.
A successful one, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think about like Game of Thrones, and I just love the Game of Thrones.
I haven't watched Game of Thrones.
Oh, dude, you gotta watch that. It's awesome. And I like The Walking Dead too, but I with Game of Thrones, I never read the books. I haven't read the books. I probably will at some point, but I haven't yet. And I think like on one hand, a TV show and a movie would like really get somebody into this series, like with Walking Dead. Like I would probably 1 out of every 10 people I talk to that watch the TV show actually read the comics,
Yes.
But they're aware of the storyline and they know what's going on and they can communicate, their likes and dislikes and just the same as any, comic book fanboy could. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, I agree with Brian K. Vaughan. I think that it would take a boatload of money to do it right. I don't think they could do it in a movie. There's just too much.
Well, if they did a series like Lord of the Rings or something ridiculous.
Yeah,
Lord
maybe.
of the Rings, though, people have a strong. That book's been around for like 50 years, so it's
Yeah.
pretty got. I mean, it's got a fanfare that makes people keep coming back
Right. Right.
for those long, boring movies. But anyways, yeah.
But I wouldn't mind a TV show if it was done really really well, especially since this is like a relationship driven story, and that lends itself well to TV because like it's the reason why they can do Game of Thrones. Like Game of Thrones, yeah, they have these like massive, huge, epic battles with like crazy effects and dragons and stuff like that.
You gotta have
but
something in between
90% of the time, they're just people sitting around a table talking.
Well, because you got to have something in between the battles. You just can't have battles for 90 minutes.
Right.
It
right.
desensitizes you, and you're like, okay, that was cool, but
Right.
at the end.
You would have to find the right network too, because with as much questionable material.
Yeah, it couldn't just be on the sci-fi, or
Yeah.
you'd have to completely like take some of the stuff out.
Yeah, I feel like it'd almost have to be like HBO or something.
Yeah,
But,
definitely.
so what's been your favorite issue?
I mean, the
Slash
first one
favorite
is-
cover.
My favorite cover is, it was number 11, the one with the flowers and the
Yeah.
grandfather.
Yeah.
Because of the colors and the flower. Well, not so much the flowers, but the colors of the flowers.
Right.
Or maybe I liked the flowers.
And how about your favorite issue?
My favorite issue is number 12 because of just the scene with the TV head and the author. Like, you figured that something was going on, You figured what was going on, but you wasn't quite sure. And then, it all ended up that it was. And, I always liked when I'm right. So.
So you like number 12 because you were smarter than the comic book.
I don't know about.
I'm just
Yeah, pretty much. Sure. I don't know.
Personally, go ahead.
That was a good scene, though, because I mean, I don't think there was any fighting in that issue at all. Well, that mouse exploded, but
Mouse exploded.
like that part made me laugh, though. But if that was in a TV show, it'd probably make me want to throw up.
Really? Yeah.
I don't like the gross stuff, but like on the comic book, it was kind of funny, especially because it was a mouse. I mean,
yeah. My favorite book was probably number 1, just because in terms of bang for your buck, you got so much for $2.99.
yeah, that was $2.99 too. Usually $2.99 book or a double-sized book, you're paying like $5.
Yeah. Yep. And you got a double-sized issue. And you know what's funny about it, though, is like as you're reading it, you feel like even though it's a double-sized issue, I felt like that book read twice as fast. Like,
well, I've noticed that this book does read really fast. Like, there's not a lot of words, but the Fiona's artwork tells a lot of the story with it at the same time.
right. I mean, it's like comic books are such a unique medium because it's boiled down to like your basic principles of storytelling. You have dialogue, and then exposition, which is substituted with pictures. That kind of like fills in your exposition, and so when your artwork is that good and it marries so well with your dialogue, it just reads so quickly. I mean, it shows that relationship working really well.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right.
Well, do you have any questions?
No. Do we want to go into ranking it, or I mean?
Oh, sure.
Do we even really need to? I mean.
Let's go into ranking it, and then let's talk about how the book has done as like an investment and what we think it'll do in the future.
Okay. Out of 5, I guess. I'm giving it a 5 out of 5. I think if you, it's a no-brainer to check it out unless you're like really conservative and don't like looking at stuff that's going to shock you. Other than that, check it out. I mean, 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I give it a 5 out of 5 as well. It's like the one book that I look forward to every month, and with the warning that it is like a lot of adult content. So if you're like not over the age of whatever it is that comic book says that you should be. I don't know what it is. I don't know what their ratings are. But I mean, you probably shouldn't read it, just because it is like a lot of adult content. And so, if you are of age to like buy that book, I would say absolutely buy it. If you're not, then get it in trade paperback when you are of age to buy that book, because it's a great story, but it's not for everyone. I mean, I don't think little kids should be reading it. Definitely not.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so investment-wise.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that is really interesting to me, just because I like to follow this kind of stuff. I haven't like done a lot of like buying or selling based on investment potential. I'm not like that. Like, I'll pick up a book if it's a good deal, but I'm not a prospector, but with this book, I knew this book was going to be big. I knew that it was going to be worth more than the $2.99 cover price, just because of the star power that Brian K. Vaughan brought to the table. Not to mention that after I read it, I was like, this is something really special here. And I'll tell you, you can even ask 123 Comic Bro about this. I called 123 Comic Bro the day that book came out, and I said to him, go to your local comic book shop. Sorry, I keep getting text messages. Go to your local comic book shop, pick up as many issues of this comic as you possibly can, because this thing's going to be big.
Well, I think you called me.
And he didn't.
I think you called me and told me. And
oh, really?
I was like, I don't even know what the hell that is, And so, and so like, I'm looking up all these different comic book stores around the country, and they're just not around the country, around my town, because apparently we used to have a lot, but with the economy the way it was, they all closed. And so the only place to get it from was my store that didn't have any copies. So.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Is the first issue the only one that's worth like any big money, or?
It is. So basically, like, the first print of the first issue is really the only one that's worth a lot of money. Right now, I looked it up earlier today. It's kind of all over the board. Like, it's a little weird. Like, on the low end, the lowest I saw a #1 first print go for was like $50.
That's pretty good.
And that's pretty good. And then on the high end, an ungraded copy got $120. So it's like, it's weird for me, because like, I don't really know what to make of that. Either way, it's doing very well. But like, and then you have graded copies, and the graded copies seem to go for about $125 to $140. For 9.8s. I'm sorry, I should clarify.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's weird. It's weird to me that somebody's willing to pay $120 for an ungraded near mint copy, and another person's while another person's paying $120 for a graded copy.
Well, that could very well just be though that someone didn't do their homework and bid that much.
Yeah.
I mean that's I don't know.
Yeah. Now, having said that, I don't think this book is going to gain any more value unless something like a movie or a TV show or something comes out, because it's not like it's not like there aren't copies out there. I mean, it's a book that sold well.
And it went into like 4 printings too, so you'll always be able to get a copy of. Maybe not a first printing, but.
Right. So it's like, and especially since it's attracting a lot of new readers, a lot of new readers don't automatically gravitate to first prints. They will gravitate more to like the collections, the graphic novels. So, and they have released several graphic novels. Or how many did they release? Just one?
Just 2 of them.
2.
This is a book that I've bought in both of them just because I don't want to read the singles or whatever again.
Right.
Because in case it does, all of them start going up to like 10 a piece or something. I don't know. I don't want to be tearing up the $10 books.
And of course, every time a graphic novel comes out, the price of that number 1 goes down, because it's like, well, if I can read it in graphic novel form, why would I spend $50 or $80 to buy a raw one?
Yeah. Exactly, because I mean, you can get it for that price, and price is always by demand. How many people want this book? Okay.
Yep. So, like, as of right now, I'd say it's probably, with what we know right now, it's probably not a good investment book if you're going to invest in something.
Yeah.
It would have been a great investment book when it came out, but it's kind of peaked. It's been at these prices for, 6 months. So it's like, I haven't really seen it move a ton.
Yeah, it's probably going to stay where it is. And, I mean, I don't see it going down, but it'll probably stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do we want to move on to books or events that are coming out soon?
Yeah, that's I think that's your area, so take it away.
Okay, Helheim, it just finished, but Colin Bunn and Joelle Jones. Colin Bunn informed me on Twitter that there will be 2 more miniseries, 6 apiece. And Helheim's a monster book with Vikings and magic, and they fight each other. And there's going to be 2 more miniseries with an epic conclusion at the end, or whatever. So that sounds that makes me happy that it's going to be longer than 6 issues. There's going to be 12 more over the amount of how many long it takes them to finish. The 50th anniversary crossover of the X-Men, Battle of the Atom. Are you excited about this one?
I don't know about it.
Anyways, it's Brian Michael Bendis is writing it, and various artists. It's going throughout Uncanny, X-Men, and the all-new X-Men, and maybe something else. Anyways, basically, there's people that don't want the original X-Men in the present anymore, and they want to get rid of them. So that's what it's about. I'm excited to read it because I'm reading all new X-Men, but I'm going to wait for it to come out in trade and then check it out then. Because I'm cheap.
Huh.
Cool. I always like Brian Michael Bendis though, so.
Oh yeah.
DC's doing their first event since the New 52 started, and it's going to be called Forever Evil. It's going to be based on the bad guys, which sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
It's going to be Jeff Johns and David Finch is going to be on that bad boy. And it looked like from looking through all the other stuff that all the other books are going to be focusing on that also. Tie-ins and stuff. They're starting a new Archie title called Afterlife with Archie. And it's going it's going to be Zombies and Archie with Francisco Francavilla on art. I think that starts in October, so yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Velvet #1. I'm really looking forward to this one because it has the 2000 Captain America team, Ed Brubaker and Steve Epting on art. It's going to be another spy book, and it has a woman on the cover, so a woman spy book. And last but not least, Avengers graphic novel coming out. I think it's in October or September with Warren Ellis writing.
Huh.
So that seems pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that's about it. So,
That's awesome.
yeah. You guys should just go out and buy all those right now. Go to the press
Okay.
and steal them off the press. Hot off the press.
Let me just cash in my retirement fund.
Yeah.
And I'll get right on that.
I don't know how much of those I'll actually be reading, but I figured, you guys might want to know. I don't know how much you guys read or know about comic books, so yeah, we'll get at you probably in another month's time with a book. We haven't talked about one yet, so
If you have any suggestions, though, leave it in the description below, or in the comments below.
yes. But until then, comment, thumbs up and down, and
We always get thumbs down. You're not gonna hurt our feelings. It's all right. You can thumbs down.
and we will see you next month. So see you next time.
See you next time.